All right, so we're going to talk about feelings today. What are feelings? What happens? What goes on within us? How do we miss them at times? And what we're going to do is talk about some of the challenges that come up for our participants when we're doing these programs and the ways that we address it. And Lynn's going to kind of role play some of the challenges people have around feelings.
Well, and the first one is often, people say, well, I ask how somebody's feeling and they're saying fine. Or what's going on and they say nothing.
Right.
Which is clearly not possible. Nothing is going on, but you get that kind of response.
Yeah. So these scenarios, lots of times what happens for people is we stay up in our heads and we don't realize that the feelings that are going on because we're listening to the story in our head, or we're busy looking at the situation that's outside of us and we're so focused on that we're not going inward to see what's happening with ourselves.
Oh, I think that's really a very big thing. Even, I resonate for myself. I'm listening and thinking. I'm not tuning into the feeling. And then when you ask me what I'm feeling, it's like there's this big gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another big challenge. What are you feeling?
Yes.
And so most people in our society have less than 10 feeling vocabulary words or words to label their feelings. So we're pretty restricted. And lots of times you might hear people say things like, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad. Well, these are very undescriptive. They're not specific enough.
Yeah.
And so there's a process of learning to slow down, turn inward, and then learn to label each of those feelings.
And I think it really does start early. It's kind of like anything in life. If you learn it early, it's easier. So, my family was big onto manners, so we learned them early. If you're an adult trying to learn protocol for a certain situation, it can feel horrible and uncomfortable and forced.
Yeah.
So, because I didn't learn many words in the feeling area, with an English mom and a Japanese father, it was pretty much stiff upper lip and silence. And even the feelings that did show up, often my parents were uncomfortable with them. So my sister, who would often go to tears, that was really uncomfortable. So I just kind of got a subtle unconscious message. Feelings either aren't that important or they're not that good.
Right.
So when you talk about feeling vocabulary, let's talk about what we cover in the course.
Yeah, okay. So in the Inner Balance program, we help people look at what is going on with your feelings and how to label them. So we use the feeling wheel from Gloria Wilcox and kind of go into there's core feelings. We feel sad, mad, afraid, or on the pleasurable side, peaceful, powerful, or joyful. And so when we really slow down and kind of ask ourselves, inquire within ourselves, am I feeling sad? Am I feeling mad? Am I feeling afraid? You'll notice your body responds. Yeah, I'm feeling mad. I'm feeling some sort of frustration, or which is an anger or irritation. These are all in the mad spectrum.
Right.
And you may also notice a secondary feeling of I'm also feeling a bit anxious, which is afraid. So once we start practicing that in our daily lives, we'll really start to get in tune with what that sensation is in our body when a moment happens.
That's interesting you linked, and I know we do, the anxious to afraid. I think for so many people, that's not a direct connection. If I feel anxious, I wouldn't say I'm afraid. I code it in a certain way. And yet, as you say, when we look at this, feeling wheel, there's the core, and then we go further out to related feelings, all in a certain spectrum.
Yeah, that's right.
And that anxious is on that afraid continuum. And that's very powerful to really make those connections.
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying earlier, is so important. A lot of us have been raised to dismiss, discount, distract from our feelings, not sit present with them. So it does take a relearning, basically, an unlearning of what you've been taught, and then a relearning of how to go have direct experience with the sensation and what feeling that would be. And that helps us really build, a robust feeling vocabulary, and definitely helps us as we go farther in life, because we've heard lots of people talk about, when we're going into healing work, you have to feel it to heal it.
Right.
Right? And, or the other flip side or similar of it is, the point is not to feel better, it's to get better at feeling.
Right.
So that's the first step for us. And then the next step is where is that feeling coming from within us? So what's the past experience or conditioning or something coming from our family or societal script,
Yeah.
which is attached to that,
Yeah, and that's, you start to see the real connection between identifying feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and then the healing work that can happen,
Yes.
which that goes beyond the Inner Balance program, but you really do get the foundational skills, if you like, that you need to move forward in a healing journey.
Yeah, and we do cover that stuff in the Discovery program and in the Inner Peace program. But for the Inner Balance, we're going to look at what thoughts or feelings are you having, and you'll see the thoughts and feelings are linked. And then we'll be able to explore those thoughts and flip them into something more positive, which of course will bring more positive feelings.
Right.
You know.
The other thing I think I've noticed that people raise is a fear that if I go into my feelings, it's just going to be worse. I mean, that they're going to be overwhelming. I will never stop crying, or I'll be out of control angry or whatever. And actually, because we're afraid of feelings, we end up creating the very thing we're afraid of. We stockpile our feelings, and then when they do come out, they come out too strongly.
Right.
Because we've not been naming them and sharing them or sort of staying current with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, they wind up kind of being shoved down
Yeah.
and then blowing up
Right.
when a time comes that is frustrating or something. Yeah.
The other thing I noticed you really picked up on in the course is men saying, "I'm not angry."
Yeah, that's a big thing.
It's a big thing.
Yeah, and kind of as you were pointing to earlier, if somebody were to say, I'm anxious, and you say, oh, well, you're afraid, they would say no.
No.
And it's the same. Lots of people will push back at being mad
Right.
or angry.
Yeah.
I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I'm frustrated. I'm irritated.
Yeah.
I'm annoyed, which are all in the spectrum of mad.
Yes.
The challenge is a lot of us have coded the word mad or afraid with such a big negative context that we don't want to admit we're that, and we also don't see the situation as that. We're not, I'm not so mad that I'm going to kick the garbage can.
Right.
I was just annoyed, irritated.
Right.
So I think that's a great piece for us to learn, because there's in taking responsibility that these nuances of feelings are all falling in within one category, like I say, annoyed being under mad. It just helps us expand what's going on inside us is okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong here. There's a part of us that wants to wrong or push that away, then doesn't allow us to be able to feel and heal and really develop that feeling vocabulary.
And it also really limits intimacy. Like, if you can't tell me what's going on, if I'm in a relationship with you, then I'm going to feel helpless too.
Right.
And then I might be in danger of making up my own story about what's going on.
Yes.
And now we're getting further apart rather than getting to be understood.
Well, and it's a great point, because communication in relationships, I'm sure most people say, is the number one thing.
Yeah.
But if I don't understand myself, then what hope do I have of understanding you or the other person?
Yeah.
So it really does start with ourselves, and feelings is such an enormous piece that most people aren't good at understanding or being in touch with the nuance of that sensation is what.
Yeah. And I know I spoke about men often saying, "I'm not mad." On the flip side, women, I notice, and it came up in the course, is will go to crying or sad, but when you dig underneath, they're actually mad. But because being mad seems so unacceptable or scary or unfeminine or it's safer, ironically, to cry. And so you get the tears rather than the genuine frustration or anger that's actually sitting there needing to be addressed. So lots of people have that kind of mixed up. They think they're sad when in fact they're mad. And a good, healthy mad, you can do a lot more with than going into sad when that's not the real, genuine feeling.
Yeah, and when you mix it up that way, you move yourself to a place of helplessness to some degree, right?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And by the way, most people struggle with tears. So now I'm trying to be understood and I'm in tears, and maybe my partner's moving further away, and it just goes from bad to worse.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone today for joining us and talking about feelings. If you have any other questions, please send them in to us.
Yeah, and if this is resonating for you and you feel, wow, I'd like to learn more about my feelings and be supported in that, I'd like a bigger vocabulary. Maybe you weren't raised to know much about feelings like myself. You know, Inner Balance is a really great place to do that. It's a short 4-week course. You get to watch things online and do it at home, just taking in the information, thinking about it, and then practicing a bit. And then when we get together in the live Q&A, you can ask your questions and we can address them and share different perspectives. So if that interests you, we look forward to you joining us in Inner Balance.